Well, good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on talent acquisition practices in the new normal. This is a Times Ascent webinar. My name is Pancham Dogra and I'm going to moderate this webinar along with four very senior people. And let me first quickly introduce you to these panelists. The first panelist I want to introduce is Arpan Anand, who is a CHRO of Aditya Infotech Limited. He is also a member of Leaders Excellence at Harvard Square. Arpan, as an HR professional, has helped the organizations in building the right culture, talent pipeline, talent management, and development. Apart from this, he has handled administrative functions on a pan-India basis. Arpan is very passionate about coaching and has been able to build smart and lean HR teams from scratch over the last 2 decades. So Arpan, if you could quickly wave to the people, then people will know that it's you we're talking about. Yeah, thank you. The second panelist that I want to introduce is Arun Verma, who is a CHRO with Beetle Teletech. In fact, Arun has more than 18 years of experience with exposure across industries like FMCG, finance, management consulting, technology. He is also a Goldsmith certified executive coach. Arun comes with a rich experience of setting up HR operations, defining HR strategies at the startup stage of various organizations. And in fact, in terms of his list of organizations that he has worked with, Arun has worked with Reliance Capital, Kevin Care, and MNC organizations like McKinsey, Xerox, and Brightstar. Arun, if you could quickly wave to the audiences, then I can quickly introduce Geetanjali.
Yeah, I just did.
Sure, thank you. So Geetanjali is Vice President and Head of People and Organization for NL Green Power. She is also a certified corporate mindfulness trainer by Potential Project in US. Geetanjali heads people and organization for NL, one of the largest project generation, power generation companies in the world. She has almost 2 decades of leadership experience in organizational learning, talent development, and people strategy. And she has worked with one of the most admired organizations in the world, like General Electric, Hewitt, and Vodafone. Gitanjali, if you can quickly wave to the audience, then I can quickly introduce Sanmitra. So Sanmitra is a CHRO for Hitachi Payment Services Limited. He's a senior HR leader with experience in leading organizational growth and change management. He has always enjoyed providing visible HR leadership. He has multifaceted experience of working in top Indian and multinational organizations, where he has managed various HR functions for the international workforce, including union negotiations and dealing with government. With the kind of rich panel that we have, we hope to actually have a very enlightening conversation about the talent acquisition piece. Now, a lot of people think about talent acquisition and they say, what's the big deal about it? But if you look at, for example, latest research that consulting organizations have been coming up with, not only that, lot of new books about the new talent edge, so and so forth. Everybody talks about the fact that while everybody thinks that they can compete on technology, they can compete on processes, but eventually people don't realize that they are actually competing on talent. And all things being equal, the only differentiator eventually would be the quality of talent that you have in the organization and how engaged the talent is. And from that point of view, the talent acquisition becomes a very important funnel, because the people who are managers of the talent acquisition processes, they are the gatekeepers of who comes inside the organization. As gatekeepers, if you get a poor candidate in, it doesn't matter how much you invest in learning and development, you will only be able to improve a bad candidate. On the other hand, if you get a very high quality talent, then with small investment in learning, you can actually get a much higher marginal rate of return. And that is why, contrary to what people think of recruitment, talent acquisition as a process is one of the most important processes for any leader. And in fact, in the book Work Rules, Laszlo Bock, who was the head of human resources in Google, he also spoke about it, that the most important job of any leader is to hire right first. Everything else starts from there. And if that is the context, then it is only fair to look at what has happened in the last 1 year and say, What has changed in the field of talent acquisition, number one, and number two, what can we do as organizations to make sure that our gatekeeping is foolproof, so that we are able to get the right people and then make sure that they stay with us. So on that note, I would actually like to invite the panelists one by one to share their opening remark as to what they think of the future of talent acquisition, given the current state of mind. So Arpan, I'd like to start with you in that order.
Thanks, Pancham, giving me this opportunity. See, you have already said something which I was thinking of saying, that talent acquisition has become the only differentiating factor in today's world. Look at money, you can get money. There are financial institutions to give you money. Technology, you can buy a technology. So what is remaining now? It is the difference between a company A and a company B. And who makes the company is the talent. What I will call talent acquisition the most important function, even more important than sales. Because ultimately, who gives you sales? It is the talent, is the person who gets you into it. Now, the importance of talent acquisition becomes so important when you know your complete business is dependent on what kind of people are coming. So, therefore, you should focus more on right fit instead of the best talent. So what is most important is the best talent. Talent acquisition should focus on the people who are there getting in. Are they going to gel well with the culture of the company or not? And in the last, I will only like to say, employee is the brand and brand is the employee for it.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, Arpan, thanks a lot for talking about some of these very critical pointers. So one of the important pointers that you actually talked about is the fact that the person who is engaging with the candidate is the custodian of the brand, number one. And for the person who's interacting with us, from the organization's point of view, we become the brand. The entire moment of truth is in that conversation piece. And that's a very interesting thought. So, in fact, I wanted to invite Arun to build on that thought, and then we will start the next set of questions.
Sure. So, see, I would like to quote Microsoft, CEO Satya Nadella when in the last year he said that we have got digitization worth 2 years done within 2 months. I think that summarizes the whole thing. Now, because of that, what has happened is there are no boundaries. Previously, when we used to talk about that we have to have a talent acquisition person in a particular city, we used to think about, okay, this person knows this city, the pool which is available, or at best the pool which is available in that industry sector. Now, because of the technology and this concept of remote working or work from anywhere, all because of the technology, the talent pool has absolutely no limits. And that's where the role of a talent acquisition and this whole process, how we acquire a talent, has become more and more important. Because in the coming times, everybody will have technology, everybody will have information. What will make the difference is how and using what tools we discover that talent which was hiding somewhere. It could be a tier 3 city, it could be a third world country, it could be the western world. How we can get that talent to contribute to our business. I think that's what the whole process of talent acquisition is all about now.
In fact, thanks a lot, Arun. You talked about a very interesting thing. So, in fact, you talked about the fact that technology is no longer that sort of differentiating factor, as much as maybe the necessity. Number one, and how it has enabled talent acquisition is opening new pockets of talent for us. So that's a very interesting thing. And on that note, I will actually come to Gitanjali, and maybe I'll want to build on the two thoughts that our previous panelists have spoken about, Arpan and Arun. So Gitanjali, now you represent a very distinct organization. Why this is distinct is the nature of industry is such that you actually are not a typical consumer brand. Having said that, the kind of expertise that you would need in the kind of business that you're managing would be very, very high. And therefore, looking at the fact that the moment of truth, whether it's a B2B brand or whether it's a B2C brand, the moment of truth is in the conversation between the talent acquisition person, or for that matter, any person of the organization, and any prospective candidate. How are you managing this for your organization, given the fact that you operate in a very distinct, a very different industry, which is green energy industry of the future, but it is very different from a typical consumer industry?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Pancham, that in the power generation industry, we work in a super matrixed environment, and collaboration is key. So while talent acquisition, of course, continues to be owned by the talent acquisition experts in the company and the immediate hiring managers, for us, what's really helped drive strategy as far as talent acquisition is concerned is by involving a number of people in the process outside of the immediate talent acquisition team. So I'll give you a few examples. One is when something as basic as writing a job description. When we write, and we have several people in the same role. So when we write a job description, we make sure that it is vetted by some other people who are in the similar role, so that they know exactly how real it is. And when somebody outside reads it, they know exactly what is expected of them. Then, when we conduct interviews internally, the interviews are not just restricted to the technical managers or the immediate stakeholders, but we invite various panels, which means people who are heads of functions or senior colleagues or other stakeholders from different functions, to interview every candidate and assess, like Arpan said. It's so important because that is the real gateway to the right culture. So to assess also a leadership fit and a cultural fit for the company. And also, we consider talent acquisition to be a two-way street. So it's not about us, NL, trying to attract people from the market. It's also them attracting us. So we want to make it, and a marriage works well only if both sides love each other, isn't it? So we ensure that people in the company from different functions talk to prospective candidates, help them understand the nitty-gritties of our culture, and only when both sides are happy does the marriage happen.
Well, thanks a lot, Gitanjali. In fact, you talked about something very interesting, and I would want to now request Sanmitra to build on some of these things. Of course, your industry, while of course there is a lot of buzz around the fintech organizations and the entire banking and non-banking financial sector. So you also happen to work in a sector which is again a multinational organization, a Japanese organization. Plus operating in a market like India, where there is a talent, I won't call it talent, but labor surplus, let's put it this way. So how do you, for example, balance between the demands of the job here and also the cultural demands because of the parent company values, and make sure that your talent acquisition processes work?
So, Pancham, is my voice audible?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So I missed few seconds, but I got a sense of it. So actually, if you look at it, my sense is that I will like to define what really we mean by talent. So if you look at it, of course, this talent is a very big, widely used word. Everyone uses it, and how I would define talent is something which is a combination of right skills and attitude to perform a job, and that accomplish the desired objective and goal in a context of an organization. If that is the talent, then basically the whole premise on which the talent starts changes. So if you look at it, I think with all last year, whatever has happened with COVID and all, I definitely feel that going forward, it is basically we are going to get into JIT for talent acquisition. So far we talked about JIT in inventory management, and couple of industry definitely have mastered it, but I think now we are going to get into JIT of talent acquisition, because that is what really help you then to align to in terms of the business goals, in terms of having the right cost associated, right people associated. And of course, the next big thing is, which I feel is going to happen, is about finding the right source mix. So right source mix is equally important. How many people you want to have full time, how many you will have on contractual role which you don't need full time, how you're going to harness the whole gig economy piece of it now, since with all these millennial workforce and whatever that has been happening around. So I think all these things is what I feel is going to kind of decide what the talent acquisition process should be, and that's where probably each organization will look at their own recipe and decide what really works for them.
Well, thanks, Sanmitra. You actually touched upon a brilliant point, and in fact, it's a very interesting because each one of you are adding one element to the conversation, and I will want to build the conversation that you had, Sanmitra, uh, about what can organizations do. So in the last 1 year, we know that for example, the amazing facilities that people used to talk about, that has gone away. So even the kind of people used to say colloquial or collegial environment that we would provide in organizations, that has gone away because it's a virtual environment now. So how are organizations shifting their employee value proposition? So Arpan, in fact, I would invite you to talk about this, and then of course we'll continue to build this conversation.
Okay. You said Arpan or you said Arun?
Arpan, you. Yeah.
Arpan. Okay. I think in my present organization, not much is changing. Not much is changing. Employee value propositions are almost the same, except that things which were being given when they were coming to offices, the facility, there's slight shift. Now more focus is more on health, well-being, and remote working. Okay. Now another thing which has come in, it was always important, but it has become more important, is how your KRAs are defined now. It is becoming very, very more critical, because when you don't have face-to-face interaction, there's a tendency to feel extreme, have an extreme emotions, right from exuberance to depressed emotions. So KRAs and KPIs are something which is becoming more important. There were some gaps, there were some dark areas, which I think is now coming out, and now it is the other way around. The employee has started asking me, define my KRAs. He's much more clear, much more serious about all these is happening. Next thing is one more thing which I can see. Today, I think the tables have turned. Instead of talent acquisition person having an upper hand, though I never believed it, but practically it always have. It is not the talent which is having an upper hand. Today, when he comes to you, probably he knows more about you than you know about him.
Yep.
With social media. So I think the art of interviews have completely changed. The traditional interview style is no more relevant. It is obsolete. Tell me about yourself. Where do you see 5 years down the line? You don't even know 6 months down the line. And the last point which I've been saying, every touch point of a potential talent is become very, very important. Every touch point. He's watching you. So I take it very seriously, because I always feel the other person has an upper edge. I'll be happy that he comes and join my organization, instead of saying that I would be the one who gives him job. No, it is the other one. And so therefore these are what I feel is changed much more. The questions which the talent has started asking has also changed a lot. So what's your policy on work from home? Right, he started talking about on those lines. And how are your KRAs defined? How do you account them? So I think these are some of the things which has different way of seeing EVP now.
You're right. You're absolutely right about it. In fact, building on what you just talked about, so EVP now is less about what you have to offer in terms of the traditional things that you were doing, but now we are focusing the EVP on how can we help you stay healthy and make sure that you are able to live a fulfilling life at work as well as at home. So absolutely right. Having said that, on that note, I will actually want to come to Arun. So Arun, of course, we know that now, of course, what has happened again about health and well-being, again, every organization is doing the same. So if we were to look at the unique EVP of an organization, somehow so everybody's talking about the same thing. So what is unique is something that, how do we give that to the candidate? So the candidate knows that, this organization is offering me something that nobody else is thinking about. So any thought on that?
So see, some things which in fact we have kind of worked in the last year, where we had time and we knew that once the entire lockdown and this COVID is behind us, there are certain things which are not going to change. And one of the things, of course, as you rightly said, is the well-being aspect. So when we hire
Correct.
people today, they are asking that how we are, not directly but in different ways they ask the same thing. For example, when the vaccines are out, is your organization going to help in that? Then they say,
Sorry, somebody's speaking here. So can you just be on mute, please? Thank you. Sorry.
yeah. So then people also talk about that. Do you have any, online sessions where people can talk about the nutrition? Can they talk about the ergonomics? Can they talk about the lower body workout? Because that is what is majorly getting, affected in a very adverse way. So these specifically, I was surprised to interview certain millennials. Like, they are relatively young and they also have similar kind of questions. Then another thing which we have worked basis the inputs that we have got from such people is that they want
Hmm.
to know how sound we have in terms of policies to safeguard or to help employees financially. So now they are not
Hmm.
talking about the typical loan aspect or anything. They're talking
Hmm.
about if something goes wrong in case of exigency, what is the medical cover that you have? Can they extend it? Can that be extended to their family? Can that be extended to their in-laws? And then they also talk about certain concepts like there are organizations which have come up like early salary, advanced salary, which is basically you tie up with them, and in case of any financial need they can directly take help from them. So these are some of the questions which have come up during last year, and we have built on that. Some we have adopted, some of course they have hit the roadblock because of budgetary issues or not in line with the EVP, the existing EVP. But the bigger question, Pancham, is that there is nothing called EVP which can last long time. You have to
Correct.
we are in that age where we have to relook our EVP maybe after every 3 months to see any new project, any new division which is coming up, the kind of changes in the profile of the new hires that we are making. Every time we have to go back and look at it. What is the EVP that we have? Are we truly living up to it? Which is the most important aspect of EVP, that you truly live up to it.
In fact, what you did was you hit the nail on the head, because ultimately it is not about a piece of paper or grand statements of what on our career sites or a part of the job description, but it is in the real experience that employees have, and organizations like Glassdoor, for example, have now proven that unmoderated comments are more relied upon by people than maybe the push strategy through our career websites. So given that, in fact, the interesting question, interesting conversation that Arpan was talking about was, how do we handle our interview processes? That also is a moment of truth. And in fact, the question that Arpan, you spoke about, that people are asked, tell me about yourself. So we'll actually check with audiences as to what their experience has been. Have they been asked this question in all the interviews, or have they experienced people being asked this question? And then we will build on it and we'll come to you, Gitanjali, basis what we hear here. So audiences, there is a poll for you. So can you just quickly answer? Let's see what we say. So what we are asking the audiences is, in all our interviews, not only hiring into the recruiter interviews, but even hiring manager interviews. Oh, interesting. So far, not a single no. Actually, yeah, there's a slight no now. Okay, 82 overwhelmingly yes. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. We'll just wait for because there is a slight lag between when I release the poll and when people get it. So we'll just wait for a couple of seconds more to see how the responses change. Interesting. Still overwhelmingly yes. Okay. Interesting. So I'm going to close the poll now, and I'm going to then share the results, and then Gitanjali, I'm actually going to come to you and ask you. Um, uh, so looking at this now, so the logical question that anybody would say, of course, is that clearly most of us are not really doing what is known to be right in terms of asking the right questions. The next question is, how can we remedy it? What can we do about it? Gitanjali, the question is to you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that, and I can't see the screen as well.
Oh, it's actually others. Can you see the results, poll results?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's visible. I thought as
Sorry.
That, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to make sure that all of us are on the same page, Gitanjali, 89% people are saying that in each interview that they have witnessed, either themselves being part as an interviewee or interviewer or other people, 89% of the cases in every interview, this question is asked. Tell me about yourself.
Right.
The question is, we know that that is not the best question to ask in all interviews. The next question is, what can we substitute this with? How can we make the most of the limited time that we have to assess a candidate?
Okay. Yeah, I guess one should consider the intention behind this question. So my assumption is when an interviewer asks a candidate, tell me about yourself, they are, yeah, now, okay, I'm back now. So,
I hit the poll just to make sure that you could see.
okay, the intention is to understand what is the kind of first impression that the candidate makes on you. And that first impression can be asked through various questions. So tell me about yourself, or take me through your CV, or what brings you here. I mean, there are so many different interesting ways. Of course, as a recruiter, my suggestion is always, and this is what we always say, that always first, unless you really want to make it purposely a stressful interview, always put the candidate at ease, because you really want them to see how they would perform in a real work environment, which may not always be a very unnerving, stressful environment. So when the candidate is able to be fully himself or herself, how do they present themselves? So we ask people to start with something, an achievement, an award, a hobby, an interest that the candidate. So my counsel always is read the CV bottom up instead of going
Yes.
top down. Read bottom up. Look at all the interest. Look at the person behind the professional. Start talking about the person. Bring out the person. Get them comfortable and at ease, and then slowly delve into all the professional achievements. So, so going back to that question, Pancham, is I think the intention is to understand, and especially now in today's scenario when everything is digital, all your influencing, your leadership, your task assignment, your results, everything is being measured digitally. You have to make sure as a leader or as a professional, you have to have a real strong virtual presence. And you have to know what is the impression. If I'm in a negotiation, whether it's an internal or external negotiation, will this individual be able to negotiate with internal or external stakeholders? How well will they be able to hold their position or their point? So the aspect of communication and virtual presence becomes really important. And I think that this question opens up a lot of possibilities for the individual to express himself or herself. So for me, it's a good question to start with. It's not a bad question.
Okay, interesting. Well, thanks, Gitanjali. So that's a contrarian view from what Arpan spoke about. We'll come to that in a minute. In fact, I'll build on what Gitanjali spoke about. Now, see, what you talked about, Gitanjali, is also counterintuitive to a typical hiring process. The way it works like a factory. So there is a mandate that comes. There is a critical to quality success criteria, and then we have to start looking at resumes and quickly look at which criteria are met by each resumes. And that brings me to the next question that audience is also asking. So Neha has asked this question, and Sanmitra, I'm going to ask this question of you. The question that Neha is asking is, how do we use artificial intelligence and data analytics in hiring? That's one. My question on top of that is,
Couldn't hear it.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question. So Neha is asking, how can we use artificial intelligence and data analytics in the hiring process, number one. And my personal question is, does it work?
Good question. So no, I think it's a very good question, and I have a very different view. So if you look at it today, I think every other person is just jumping on AI, just jumping on data analytics, and I think it has become like one of those buzzwords where you can't finish a conversation without invoking AI or data analytics. If you look at it today, again I go back to my fundamentals that what's the definition of talent and why you need a talent. So if I need a talent for a logistic company, if I need a talent which has to drive a truck from north side of the country to south side of the country, the skill is different than, let's say, I'll hire a great scientist. So the question is, the psychometric test has always been there. I mean, you look at MBTI, I mean, all the HR professionals who are on this call webinar will know, it is from 60s. Look at 16 PF, I think we grew up with that. It's from 50s. You look at new assessments which are all there. I mean, there is no dearth of any psychometric assessment. But the question is, you can really, I mean, there is a limit to what you can do. And the whole point is that in this world, which is so changing and so evolving in the business, as I think Arun made a very good point, or I think Arpan made, one of the panelists made a good point saying, what you think relevant today is no longer relevant tomorrow. So the question is, what you are benchmarking when your goalpost itself is changing. So if you look at it, I mean, IT industry knows nothing better than that, right? I mean, how many skills which were niche at one point of time are basically obsolete today. I mean, nobody wants to work there. So the whole question is that we need to go back to say what we really want to do. I mean, the question is, what is the kind of skills that we need for tomorrow, and then tomorrow's skill nobody will know. So go back to the question of saying that, do we have right aptitude? So I will quote, I don't know who said that, but I will, the famous adage that we have, hire for aptitude, train for skills. I think so there it comes all the value of AI and data analytics. Second thing is, I am personally, and I may sound little kind of different, contrarian, but the point is, I myself, I do not believe much in AI, because at the end of the day, AI is decided by human itself. So if you have your own built-in bias, I don't know how a computer which is supposed to act exactly on human instructions will ensure that those biases remain. So I remember somebody told me one time, many years back, saying, what is assessment in a performance appraisal system? He said that, whenever a human being assesses another human being, the process is going to be subjective. What you can do is create enough processes in between so that you can bring subjectivity down and try to bring more objectivity. So this is my answer to AI and data analytics used for hiring process. Yes, there are tools, there are things we can do, many things. We can do video resume, we can submit it, we can use bot, we can do many things. But question is, again, going back to Arpan's point that which business we need what and how quickly we need. I think you made that point.
Okay.
Sanmitra, thanks a lot. So what you, sorry, Arpan, you were saying
I'd
something.
just like to add what Sanmitra is saying, only one lag. See, at what stage the AI and this data analytics is today, they are more of a facilitator. Right now, they are more facilitator. We are also trying to learn. We don't know what we don't know today. So my experience has been in the present AI, the stage of AI is that they're just facilitating some of the processes become little fast. Now,
Absolutely.
have they, like Sanmitra told me, there are some biases, there are built-in biases. I think over a period of time, 5-10 years, over a period when the process will get evolved, maybe AI would be much more beneficial. Today, they just help us to do fast recruitment and maybe trying to identify some of the, because shortage of time and that needs to be fulfilled. So this, I personally feel that is what stage we are today.
No, interesting points actually. Both of you talked about something very interesting. For example, see, I think one of the things that we have also noticed is that people traditionally, when I say traditionally, when the entire concept of AI started, so it was less about adding value to the hiring process, but it was more about building efficiency to the process. And that's where I think the challenges are, because what happens is, if you look at a typical application rate, You post even a single job in India, and you will find 900 resumes.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's
Problem
becoming
there
a
is,
problem.
yeah. So how do you sift through the resumes and look at those 10 which are actually relevant for the job? And that's where people
But the
started
point
looking
there,
at.
Pancham, is that a lot of people have started now providing consultancy and saying
Yeah.
that how you can pass through the computer sorting mechanism. They call
Oh,
PMTS or something.
Correct,
So
correct, correct. So
you
search
have
engine
a
optimization, so all those
oh,
tools
Pancham,
have also cropped in. Correct.
Pancham, I just wanted to add one small example, a bit funny example, very relevant to the discussion we are having. So, few years back, Amazon introduced this AI concept to shortlisting. In fact, this was the first company to introduce. So, they created this artificial intelligence software, fed a lot of data to it, which was of past many years in Amazon. And to their surprise, when the result came out for a particular position, there was not a single female candidate in that.
yes.
So when they figured out that why this has happened, so the problem was the software kind of figured out that who are the people, what type of profiled people actually became successful in that role. Now in last many years, for whatever reasons, the Amazon managers never shortlisted a female candidate. So AI assumed itself that the female candidate are not the right fit for that. So AI
Correct.
has its own own benefits, but then one need to know how to use it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So you're right. In fact, and that's why we always say that there are other ways of also shortening the hiring cycle. And one such thing that we have seen being used very well, at least for the first round of screening in terms of basic conversational skills, is asynchronous interview platforms. Because most of the companies, what they did was when COVID happened, they moved from face-to-face interviews to Zoom-based interviews or Teams-based interviews, not realizing that they could maybe make the process better. So if you have a asynchronous interview platform, you pre-feed the questions, people respond to those questions, and that allows us to see whether a candidate should be even met going forward. Is the candidate able to express himself or herself? And is the person coherent, logical? The basic communication filter is taken care of without wasting that time on a live conversation. So some of those tools have become very useful, and that at that point I wanted to also go to the audience and ask them this poll. So we want to see to what extent some of these technologies are finding ways in corporates. So that is the context in which I'm launching the poll. So poll is already there. So audiences, the question is to you. Are your organizations using asynchronous video interviews? Asynchronous video interviews would be those where there is no live interview, but it's a recorded interview where people come and answer questions, and then you can evaluate later. Okay, interesting. So now people have started voting. There is a slight lag, therefore they've just started. So maybe we'll see some results. Okay, so it's a mixed bag, although we do have 50-50 now. Okay, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So some people have already started using it, yeah, but it still seems to us that it's not caught on as much. Interesting. So I'm going to share the results. So that will give us a clue in terms of how people are using. Gitanjali, are you able to see the poll results now?
Yes, I can see it now. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool. Thank you. Yeah. So as you can see, that majority of the people are saying no. Although, in fact, I'm surprised with even the numbers who are saying yes to it. So clearly, there is some kind of investment people have already started talking about, which is interesting because that does help organizations save some time. Now coming to some other elements of hiring, and one of the most important things that all of you, Sanmitra, you spoke about it, Arpan, you spoke about it, and Arun, you gave this example of Amazon, which talks about biasing. So I'm going to come back to Arpan after this poll that we will do with our audiences. So audience, in fact, I'm just going to hide the poll results and I'm going to launch another poll. And that poll will actually ask you a question about how involved are the managers and how prepared are the managers, because that is a key thing. So I've launched another poll. So the purpose of this poll is to look at, for example, a lot of us, when we become managers, it is assumed that we know how to select talent. It is assumed that we know what structured interview processes are. Yet, when you start investigating deep, you realize that majority of the people, while they claim they know how to hire, but they have not been trained in the concept of unbiasing, in the concept of competency-based interviewing, or using multi-rater assessments, which have been now proven time and again to predict success more than only one kind of assessment. Interesting. So we'll just wait for a couple of minutes before we get on with it. So, okay, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So results are fairly even. Yeah. So almost half in terms of the fact is that half the people are saying that there is no formal training, there is no preparation for hiring managers, and half the people say that yeah, there is. So looking at this, Gitanjali, now, how does this operate in your organization? Are you on the no side, or does your organization fall on the no side of it or yes side of it? And how do you go about some of these things?
Yeah. So obviously it goes. I mean, it's evident that if you do not choose the right set of managers from an interviewing standpoint, and also if you do not train them on a structured interview methodology that is right for the organization, because for the same candidate will have different kinds of interviews in different organizations based on the role, of course, and also the culture of the organization. So therefore, really important for the interviewing managers to be trained. I will share with you I consider it a best practice because it was phenomenal what one of my previous organizations did. So there is an organization called ICE HR in the US, and they flew a few years ago. This was, I think, a few years ago. They flew a set of consultants from that institute who came to India, and then we were 122 HR professionals in that company just in India, and half of us were trained over a period of 3 months. Some of us were not trained recruiters, some of us were not trained talent acquisition specialists. We were in different kinds of roles, but we were trained. It was almost like a coaching come train the trainer program, where and it was a fantastic training in terms of the assessment methodology, because it's something, especially if an organization is focused and depends a lot on interviewing as an assessment process, it's really important to do this. So I'll quickly tell you what that was. It was all about looking at a candidate's entire life. It was almost a psychological interview. We were not trained, none of us were trained psychologists, but it was almost like that, to go right back in the past, look at different trends or different motivations that the candidates brought to the job from their past, and then to establish trends. So we went from a hunch to a strong hunch, or a trend to a solid evidence. And when you do that, then you can pick the right competencies and call them strengths, and then pick others and call them areas of development. The other aspect of interviewing along with as a structured assessment process is reference checking. So I strongly advocate that if you're using interviews as your primary way of assessing people, definitely do reference checks with past managers, with not just in the current organization, even in the previous, probably going back to 7 or 8 years is what we used to advocate at that point in time.
In fact, interesting thing that you talked about, Gitanjali. In fact, there is a brilliant research on the subject of assessments. And this research was first published in the year 1997-98 by two professors, Schmidt and Hunter, where they talked about what works in assessments. And they said that no single way of assessing is foolproof, and therefore the best way to assess is to have multi-assessment criteria. And one of the most important factors was general mental ability tests. Now, these general mental ability tests could be online. They could. It is not only an IQ test, but this is basically a test in terms of can you connect the dots, even if you are faced in a situation you've never faced, and can you problem solve? Can you think? Are you learning agile? And that was the question. Plus, they said if you add this plus structured interview, uh, plus some kind of work sample assessment, then you can actually increase your ability to predict to more than 70% accurately. In the absence of all three, and if you use only one or two, then suddenly it drops down to less than 62%. And this research, while it was published in 97-98, it actually it was revalidated in 2014. And Pymetrics, the assessment company, they use the findings from this to design their assessments, and they have reported a lot of success. So this is for audiences point of view, the reason I'm sharing some of these things, so that audiences, you can actually look at some of these research methods, and there is enough and more research that has happened on the subject of assessment, and how do you improve your hit rate in assessments. Unfortunately, we don't see many of those research areas being put into a toolkit and deployed in organization. Then you saw some examples of the polls that we had. Because unbiasing is a huge issue in the workplace, which Arun also pointed out, not only in artificial intelligence, but natural intelligence as well. Having said that, how many of us are actually preparing our people to be unbiased? So some of those questions is what, and that also becomes the employee value proposition from our point of view. Yeah. So now, see, I touched upon this subject of talking about we don't know what skills of future are going to be, and therefore the best bet is to hire people for learning agility. So while there are multiple assessments and so on and so forth, so I wanted to understand from you, the panelists, and anyone can answer this actually. So do you use any kind of assessment to check how resilient the person is, how anti-fragile the person is, or how learning agile the person is? And if yes, I mean, it will be great for the audiences to know, because there are quite a few questions on the subject that have cropped up here.
So years back, when I used to manage, part of my job was to manage a international oil trading desk, and we used to have this whole assessment. It was a kind of UK-based firm which was specialized in the oil field, and we will put candidates to 2 days of very intensive assessment. We are not calling it assessment, we used to call it kind of know your strength or development, so that we don't want to give a impression to a candidate that we are here to select you or reject you. I mean, that's not the point. But that assessment was so complete and scientific that not only it checked about numerical ability and kind of transgression and this and that, but actually it also checked about saying the level of stress, how stressed you are, because in a trading environment, when you really have that much less time or the whatever it is, and you can make millions or lose millions, so at that point of time, do you really like to be stressed? Do you really work stressed? Do you take stress? So I think I have, but in certain jobs it works. Certain places you do a normal test, and I think it gives you a fairly indicator to say that whether the person is hitting the mark or not hitting the mark. And then again, selecting or rejecting is not a great criteria to do that, but it gives people a chances of likely to succeed or maybe in gray zone and not likely to succeed. So yes, I have used it and I found it. I mean, I take them in great respect in terms of that the value they add, but may not be equally a value could not be same for all the job is what I will say.
Correct. And I think majority of the talent processes also in any organization, because deploying the tool is one of the easiest things to do. But to create an ecosystem where everybody is able to utilize the tool to its maximum potential is continuous challenge.
Correct.
And that's where, for example, while the best practice also talks about the fact that for every role you must have a competency, and then you must have a interview guide. But how many of us are actually creating interview guides for each role? And because it's time consuming. So
Yeah.
one of the challenges about hiring is time consuming. So Arpan, anything that your organization is doing,
Sure.
despite the time it takes to hire, to push
Sure.
people to spend that time, because
I think what Sanmitra said, building on that only, we developed a competency framework in the organization for every role. So it has the soft skill competencies and also the technical competency. Now, see, bias by inherent nature, human beings, everybody will have some biases or the other, whether you acknowledge it or whether you don't acknowledge it. But if you're true to yourself, you will like to remove those biases in the complete talent acquisition processes. First of all, I'm just going a little back to answer that question. I think today the hiring managers, we just promote people. We never train them for interviews. So somebody might be very good at one particular role and you make him a team handling role, but you don't prepare him for interview taking. That is one of the reasons why wrong hires happens. Coming back to this assessment system, when you have a competency framework, I'm connecting the previous one with this also. When you define the competency framework, don't interview the person right in the beginning. Take an assessment. The moment you have assessment, you will come to know his strengths and weaknesses and development areas. You form an impression and then go through the profile. You will be seeing that there's a lot of time it becomes an easy. And those assessment also prompt you to do certain probing questions. They prompt you also. Now with that, when you select, failures will still happen, accidents will still happen, but chances of accidents will reduce drastically.
Yes.
Next thing is that when you have the complete structured hiring process, then it also helps you as an argument in case there is some change of views with the hiring manager, whether a person can. So assessments are more of a helpful, but don't take standardized assessments, because whether it's Bright Star or whether it is Asian Paints or whether it is CP Plus, everybody for same role will require different competencies. Companies have that tendency, okay, let's have the standard one, sales wala to standard. No, you have different things. So I think we adopted this, and there are many other good practices also you adopt along with your complete talent recruitment process. I think which will help you to reduce your wrong hit ratios. As far as time is concerned, I have a different view on this. I think if you spend time in creating an employer branding and talent pipeline, and you have some kind of succession planning in your mind, then there's sufficient time. There's sufficient time for hiring. Just because you are into reactive mode, you are not into proactive mode, then the time comes as time becomes a constraint.
No, thanks, Arpan. You actually hit upon something very interesting. You talked about, of course, one is competencies and the fact that your assessment has to be based on what will work for that role, number one, and therefore you cannot use what somebody else is doing. Because you got to do what you would like to hire for. So that is customization and therefore investment of time and effort both. That's one. Second, investment of time and effort to prepare the people who are going to hire, because they, like we said, they are the gatekeepers. So you got to do the right gatekeeping, otherwise the organization will become a mess. And the other important thing that you talked about was the fact that if we are proactive about many things, we will be able to save time when the time comes. And if you extend that a bit further, so some of these are very interesting things. For example, when we look at what is common between all the people that have been found at various stages to be in a state of flow, we find that there is overwhelming evidence that if you look at the big five personality theory, it talks about two specific areas. So there is one concept of openness. That means, am I open to new learning? Am I open to other people? Am I open to new experiences? If people are high in that, add to it conscientiousness. which is work ethic. If people score high on these two, the likelihood of their success goes up. The likelihood that they will be able to spend more time in flow goes up. Now, this is a well-established fact, very well researched for more than 40 years. Yet companies don't use that to do a basic screening. Not the only way to do it, but this is a useful input. And then use that to start doing the next level of assessments. Again, what we have done is we've been able to create multi-rater assessments by doing this. So some of these shortcuts at times really pay a lot of dividends. And because of the fact that we are spending so much time and effort with the candidates, if we also sit with the candidate and provide feedback, whether or not the candidate is successful, that's another way to build a brand. And we have seen a lot of success, because when people thank us because we told them what they should be able to do to improve, that is the biggest value add of any conversation that people take away. So on that note, Arun, so in fact, so because now we are coming back to the topic of employee value proposition and moment of truth. So can you share with the audiences, I just give one example, some other things that we can do to make sure that candidate experience in the hiring process is wow?
It's something, I will talk about more about the future, what future, is going to be like. And the reason being, we all are, whether we like it or not, whether we are in favor or not, the whole world is moving towards a digital first economy. So whether you are an organization which is manufacturing cement, or you are manufacturing any laptop or any software you are developing, everyone is moving towards the digital first economy. Now, by saying that, what I'm trying to say is, any organization which is lacking behind and thinking that because we manufacture cement, we are not compelled to do anything which is like everything to do with digital. So each and every process in the organization is digital savvy, which traditionally, conventionally never needed a technology. People are looking at those things from the lens of digitization. So EVP need to reflect that, whether I am going to apply to a Microsoft or I am going to apply to Ultratech Cement. I, as a candidate, would like to see how tech savvy the organization is, what kind of environment it is going to give me. And of course, the traditional things which are like how the culture is, that anyway goes by default, that anybody wants it. But if you're looking for a competitive edge, then the biggest differentiator would be in your employee value proposition. You need to say, you need to bring that experience. So some organizations as we speak are working on how they can showcase the organization to an employee, and it goes beautifully in the virtual environment. Most of the people now are open for remote working. So these companies are working about immersive experiences, which includes augmented reality and virtual reality. So they are creating these kind of short videos where people can use that AR and can actually go through the whole organization, see how people are working, what a typical work day for that particular profile holder looks like. So
Mhm.
companies are like even working in that direction. So from the EVP point of view, apart from the traditional stuff, how flexible environment is, how friendly it is, what kind of policies are there, this particular aspect, which organization is more digital savvy, is going to basically determine between a yes or a no to a very promising job offer.
Well, thanks, Arun. So, in fact, you talked about using technology as one of the value proposition to make sure the candidate experience is amazing. Number one. Number two, also candidate gets immersed into the culture of the organization before joining, so he or she knows whether this is the right place for me or not.
Right.
So extending this, so Tanmitra, your thoughts. So one is technology. Anything else that can be done to improve the overall candidate experience and hiring effectiveness? I don't think Sanmitra is able to hear us.
No, I could not hear. I could hear now. Sorry. I
Oh,
apologize.
okay,
I
okay.
could not hear. I was just blank. I thought Arun is talking.
Okay, so so I was asking you this question. So of course, Arun spoke about technology, using technology to create an amazing candidate experience, and I'm saying now, what else can we do in addition to technology to improve the candidate experience?
No, I think he's not able to listen.
Yeah, I think there is because
Yeah, so,
but could you hear me, all of you?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So Sanmitra will come to you. I'll park this question to Gitanjali in the interest of time because I'm cognizant of the fact that we're already at 5. So Sanmitra, so I'll direct this question at you. So Sanmitra will come back to you once you are ready. Yeah.
Okay, I can listen it. I can listen now.
Okay, great. Great. No, I think it's gone again. We can't hear you.
Okay. Okay, then let's move to the next one.
Yeah, so maybe we'll come back to you. Hopefully,
Okay.
your connection will stabilize by then. So Gitanjali, sorry,
Sure.
we'll come to you.
Yeah.
The same question.
Yeah, I just want to say that while we are, and I'll just come to your question also, Pancham. I think because this is related, I think while we see that on average, every role out there will attract at least 1,000 candidates from Naukri and various other platforms. Let's say we have 1,000 candidates. And now the question that you need to ask as a recruiter or as the head of HR of your organization is, and also keeping at the back of your mind that you want to hire the right talent and maybe not the best talent, but more importantly, the right talent. So the question is, do you want to screen all 1,000 people for that role? Because a lot of this depends on then the time that you spend with the candidates that you like. Let's say you have a pool of 10 candidates at the end of it. The time that you spend will depend on how much are you scouting, to what extent are you going to scout. Are you going to scout for all 1,000 and you're going to make sure that you use the best AI tools, scout all 1,000 and get the best? Or are you happy with the 100? And of course, there are 2 or 3 rounds of screening that your training partner or your vendor might do for you. And they will show you, let's say, the top 10. Are you happy with those top 10? So where does as an individual, as a recruiter or a talent acquisition expert, what is your level of indulgence in what you want to see out there? So let's say if you find, 2 or 3 candidates who perfectly fit the role or who are 80 or 90% there, and who show the potential to, the learning agility, the potential to pick up quickly, learn quickly, and do well on the job, are you going to be satisfied with it? If the answer is no, then you have a big problem on your hand, because then you will not be able to invest your time, and that is what the candidates look for. When you talk about candidate experience, of course, technology is very important, but they are looking for your time. They are looking for the value of the conversation. So the more you scout out there, and the more I don't want to use the word greed, but the more satisfied with that you are with the 2 or 3 good candidates that you found, the more you can invest in those people, invest in the conversation, have others invest in the conversation, and then create the right relationship right from the beginning. And I think that really creates a very mutually trusting relationship right from the beginning, even before the person gets on board.
Well, thank you, Gitanjali. So Sanmitra, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear it. Yes, please.
Okay, great. So closing remarks, Sanmitra, from you, because we do understand that this conversation I was really enjoying it. Unfortunately, we don't have a choice given the time that we have. So last 30 seconds, any advice that you would like to give to the viewers of this webinar in terms of what can people do to improve talent acquisition in their
Well, I think Gitanjali made a very, very passionate plea, so I will hide behind it. I think she made a wonderful plea in terms of closing remarks. I have nothing much to add except saying that, just focus on what your business requirements are and choose your methodology depending on what your business needs. And of course, take care of the human emotions, take care of the candidate, take care of candidate experience, which all the panelists call. I think that gives a long way to build that relationship, which goes back to Arpan's point of creating employer brand over a period of time. This is what I have to say.
Great. Well, thanks, Sanmitra. Arpan, any thoughts?
No, just that the interviewing skills needs to improve drastically, because by virtue of interview, it's a big farce. Both are trying to be nice to each other. And when you have 90% of the questions quite predictable, then I think you need to have a different way of looking at it. I think the candidates also need to look at that the new talent acquisition specialists, they don't go by traditional interviewing manner. They ask and they will evaluate in a different way. So they need to be very original and think out of the box. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Arun, any thoughts on?
I think it's pretty well covered, Pancham. The only thing that I would like to say and appeal to the various audiences which are listening to us, and I assume that most of them would become tomorrow's leaders. It's important, for them to understand the importance of talent acquisition. On that note, which we started this session, and Pancham, as you mentioned, that this is the gateway to a great culture, to a great organization. So all these people, they need to understand the onus does not lie only on that individual who is given the title of talent acquisition specialist. Everybody in the organization is a talent
Is a talent
acquisition
acquisition.
specialist. They need to understand that it's the onus is on them to ensure that the quality of talent is of the highest degree, it's of highest relevance, and is of highest, you know passion, in terms of passion they can bring in to the table to achieve the unimaginable growth of the organization. So I think talent acquisition need to be seen in that particular light, and it's a baby that belongs to everyone.
Right. Well, thanks a lot, Arun. Well, thanks a lot, all the panelists. Just to make sure that we summarize and the learnings don't get lost, what we want to talk to the audiences very clearly is, if you are looking to improve the talent acquisition processes and also your own lives going forward, the key is to make sure that our processes are very strong. What that means is the context of the organization is very clear. Your processes are able to build a funnel very quickly. Your assessment processes, which is a combination of technology plus other tools, is able to filter out candidates very quickly. Your questions in different rounds of screenings are not repeated, but they can test on different competencies, use more than one kind of assessment. That's the other important piece. And as recruiters, we one of the important things that we must know is this probably is the only role in human resources that sees inside and outside. We have the entire information about the talent pool inside because majority of these people would have been hired by us. Similarly, because of the fact that we keep meeting people outside, we have a complete view of the talent market. Not only the talent market, the compensation market, and everything else. And in that sense, the talent acquisition function can add much more value than only getting people. You actually can provide the real-time data for compensation benchmarking, which will be more accurate than any off-the-shelf survey that we actually get. Number one. Number two, because of the fact that we're so well connected, our ability to provide leads to sales organizations is immense. So talent acquisition is not only about getting people inside, it is also about making sure that we are adding more value to our business. And that's the other piece that we want all of us to focus on. And of course, it goes without saying that unless we prepare all the hiring managers and unless they are invested in the process, you will find that we will not be able to do justice to the role that ultimately the gatekeeper of the organization is responsible for making sure that only the right people come. And that is the essence of our role. And everything else, for example, that we do around it is going to be the real job of a talent acquisition specialist. If you want to be invaluable, in addition to doing this job, add value to business, get more intelligence, make sure that the entire talent market is mapped regularly. A lot of people spoke about proactive talent mapping, but we also know that all the candidate pipelines have to be refreshed every 2 or 3 months, because candidate is not going to wait only for an offer to come from one organization. A candidate in the market is a candidate in the market. He gets a job, he moves on. So our pipelines have to be refreshed regularly, because a talent market is always in a state of flux. People come, people go. A talent may be available today, it may not be available tomorrow. And therefore, unless we are continuously scanning, we will lose out on those people. So on that thought, we want to thank the audiences for being wonderful audiences. We thank the panelists for some enriching conversations from your experience. And we really believe that some of the takeaways that you have given, people can take back from here and are able to use it starting tomorrow and build a better talent acquisition organization wherever they come from. On that note, thanks a lot. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.